I have learned and dismantled all the words in order to draw from them a single word, home, wrote Muhammad Darwish, the exiled Palestinian poet, named it like a prayer. He was writing from the gap between the place you are and the place you belong. He knew that for millions of people, that single word, home, is not a given. It is a claim, a demand, a thing that has to be fought for or rebuilt or sometimes never found. On June 20, the world marks World Refugee Day. And I want to spend this time not just marking it, but actually sitting inside some of the harder questions underneath it. What is a refugee really? Who drew the borders they crossed and why? Who decides whether a people even exists? And what does it mean to be born into a world that has made no legal space for you? We will be talking about Rohingya, Palestinians, and the stateless communities because their lives make these questions impossible to ignore. So our very first question is, what is a refugee? In international law, the word refugee carries something specific. Under the 1951 Refugee Convention, a refugee is someone outside their country of origin who cannot return because they have a well-founded fear of persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. And their own state is either the source of that persecution or is unable or unwilling to stop it. That second part is where it really lands. A refugee isn't just someone in a difficult situation, they are someone who has been failed by the institution that existed specifically to protect them. Their government has either turned on them or looked away while someone else did. UNHCR is clear on this. You become a refugee the moment you meet that definition. Not when a government processes your claim, not when a camp registers your name. The moment. The law recognizes you before bureaucracy catches up. That's a profound thing to say on paper. In practice, between the law recognizes you and you are treated accordingly, there can be years, decades, whole lifetimes spent waiting. And now the next question, borders, discovered or invented? A refugee by definition is someone who has crossed an international border. So let's ask the question we rarely ask. Where did that border come from? We grow up with maps, and after enough years of staring at them, the lines start to feel fixed. Natural, like the borders between Myanmar and Bangladesh, or India and Pakistan, was simply always there, discovered, like a river or a mountain. Most of the world's borders, especially across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, were drawn by wars, colonial treaties, and administrators sitting in distant capitals who had sometimes never visited the places they were dividing. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya crossed from Myanmar's Rakhine state into Bangladesh after waves of state-sponsored violence. That crossing over a border drawn under colonial rule is what made them legally refugees. But it didn't make them less Rohingya. It didn't erase generations of history on that land. The border moved through their lives. They didn't cross it by choice. Palestinians have spent over 7 decades living with a map that keeps shifting beneath their feet. Checkpoints, walls, administrative zones, Area A, Area B, Area C, that determine whether you can travel to the next town or build a room into your house. That map is not a neutral geographic document. It is a record of who holds power over whom. So the next time someone says a person crossed a border, don't picture a clean neutral line. Picture a political decision made somewhere far away that determined whether that person was inside or outside, safe or not. And now the question I find the most quietly disturbing. Who decides whether a people exists? In our international system, that power sits overwhelmingly with states. States sign treaties, states hold seats at the UN Security Council, states recognize each other, people appear in the language of rights and self-determination, but in practice, whether your community is treated as a people with legal standing depends heavily on whether enough powerful states choose to see you that way. Palestinians live this contradiction every day. They are recognized as refugees by UNRWA, a dedicated UN agency operating in Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. But Palestinian refugees, under UNRWA's coverage, are excluded from UNHCR's standard protection system. And UNRWA, as the UN has confirmed, has no mandate to offer durable solutions, no resettlement, and no legal pathway to rebuild a permanent life. Palestinians are recognized enough to receive humanitarian assistance, but not quite recognized enough to access what other refugees can theoretically access. It is a liminal recognition, acknowledged but held at arm's length. Rohingya face something even more blunt, a legal erasure written into statute. Myanmar's 1982 citizenship law made membership in a recognized national race the basis for nationality. Rohingya were not on that list despite families rooted in Rakhine state going back generations. The state didn't just fail to protect them, it rewrote the criteria for belonging so they couldn't be included at all. Can a people exist without a state? Of course they can. Language exists without a passport. Memory doesn't require a visa. Music, grief, food, love, none of it needs a government's permission. The Rohingya exist. Palestinians exist. You cannot legislate away a people's reality, however much paperwork you produce trying. But without recognition, that reality becomes a permanent argument you are forced to keep having at every border crossing, every consulate window, every courtroom. You must prove that your fear is real, that your history is real, that you are not in the language that sometimes appears in actual legal proceedings as legal technicality, which is where statelessness enters. If a refugee is someone whose state has failed them, a stateless person is someone who has no state at all. International law defines it as being not considered as a national by any state under the operation of its law. No country claims you, no passport, no nationality. You exist in the world, but you are absent from its legal framework. As of mid-2025, over 1.1 million Rohingya are registered in Bangladesh, the vast majority living in the camps of Cox's Bazar, dependent on international aid with no clear path forward anywhere. Inside Myanmar, before the mass exodus, an entire generation had only grown up on that soil with no legal claim to it, denied education, healthcare, freedom of movement, not because of anything they did, but because of what they were. Palestinians carry a different, more fragmented statelessness. Some hold limited travel documents issued by host countries like Jordan, Lebanon, that establish their existence without making them a citizen. Others have only UNRWA registration cards, which prove they are registered but grant no nationality. Across the European Union, courts treat Palestinian statelessness inconsistently. A person's legal fate can genuinely depend on which country they happen to reach first. So, is citizenship inherited or is it earned? In law, it is assigned by birth, descent, or naturalization. Some people receive it as a birthright so automatic they have never had to think about it for a single day. Others must earn it. Language tests, income requirements, years of verified residency, good character assessments, requirements that can be shifted, tightened, or used as instruments of exclusion against the very communities that need them most. For stateless communities, the particular cruelty is this: they often meet every moral standard we could ask for any citizen. They work, they raise children, they endure, and still they face the one test that matters in law, being claimed by a state. A child born in statelessness doesn't inherit a passport, they inherit an absence. The inability to enroll in a school, work legally, travel, sometimes even to register their own birth. Hannah Arendt, herself stateless for years after fleeing Nazi Germany, called this the loss of the right to have rights. The idea that before you can claim any right at all, you first have to belong somewhere politically. And if no state claims you, you're not simply without rights. You are outside the category of people to whom rights apply. She wrote that in 1951. It has not stopped being relevant for a single day since. So, where does all of this leave us? Some of it leaves us responsible for how we speak. The word refugee has legal weight. It protects people in specific documented ways. When we blur it into migrant, treating forced flight as equivalent to a lifestyle choice, we quietly erode those protections. When Rohingya are called illegal Bengalis, when Palestinians are described as invented, these are not just insults. They are legal arguments. They make it easier to deny claims to safety, to land, to existence. And the people most affected by these labels are not waiting passively. Rohingya activists are documenting their history, language, and culture so that no one can credibly say it never existed. Palestinian writers, poets, and filmmakers insist that their memory is real even when the official maps disagree. Stateless communities across the world are organizing, litigating, and speaking, asserting that they are not footnotes. Mahmoud Darwish, the same poet who wrote about home, lived most of his adult life in exile, writing from Beirut, from Paris, from the place that was never supposed to become his. He ended one poem with something devastatingly simple. Here we are, the people of this place, of deeds, of days, of spring and conversion, of passion and bed. We are here, the people of this place, not a plea, a declaration. World Refugee Day should not just be a day when we speak about people. It should be a day when we ask whether we are actually listening and whether the other 364 days we are doing anything at all. Borders are decisions, not destinies. Citizenship is a legal argument, not a law of nature. Recognition is a power, and power can be used differently. On June 20, the question is not only who is a refugee, the real question is what kind of world are we building and who are we willing to make room for in it?